All right, everyone. Tonight it is April 4th, 2021. This is our first program of Manhood Race Culture Interactive for Black History Month. And I will tell you honestly, I've been looking forward to this. Um, this young man who will be presenting is, I don't know if he knows this, but, and maybe I shouldn't say this with him in the room, but it is one of the things that I have always said behind his back that he's definitely in the top two of students I've ever had as far as intelligence, engagement. I'm not going to say that he's 1A, but he's no worse than being 1B for sure. He's someone who, over time, has become like family to me, without a doubt, so much that when he ventured off to the University of North Carolina and Duke University, I put him in contact with my seventh grade teacher, so he could have someone there that would be able to aid him if anything ever came up about it. Brilliant young man, um, and I'll just say this: the Lord ain't done with him yet, and so we have some road to cover still, to see exactly where his prodigious gifts and unparalleled mind, in my estimation, is going to take him. So I'm really excited, interested, and to be honest with you, looking forward to. And this is one of the things that may shock some of my students to hear this, but I'm sure it wouldn't shock anyone here. I love to learn. And tonight will be one of those moments where, quite simply, I look forward to sitting back and truly learning some things that could aid me as far as mental health goes, and also some strategies and what have you, not just from our presenter, but from everyone in the room, surrounding not only protecting one's soul, but also building up one's soul and fortifying that aspect of our life as we fight through it. This world can be trying on us, and we all know that. We all have our own personal stories, and we have some personal stories, if you know what I mean. And I often reflect about Tupac Amaru Shakur's comment when he said, "We're actually living in hell. We're just afraid to admit it." Um, so this brother that is coming forth right now, think the world of him, and would actually he's one of the 10 people who have ever lived that I can say that I would actually pay money to come in here. So thank God he came here for free because we ain't got no budget. So the floor is yours, my brother.
Yeah. So I always begin all my talks when I teach my students with a thought for the day. And so this is the thought I use today for my students for class. And so for my students today in physics. Today's my physics day for my kids. And so I said to my kids today, when God put a calling on your life, he already factored in your stupidity. So the saying is, listen, you've already been called to something great. And so I'm working with my kids a lot about their mental health because right now I'm really worried about my students, especially a lot of my Black and brown students because they're really depressed and they're really struggling through this pandemic with the lack of interaction, a lot of different things like that. So I've been looking really intently at that. So I really wanted to talk today about mental health. I have a really, really a little brief slideshow on the show that we can just kind of just talk after that about breaking down some taboos because we're really struggling. We've talked in the past month a lot about building Black families and Black communities. Well, we're really broken people and we're shattered people, and we got to fix these issues if we want to have any hope of repairing, male female relationships, male male relationships, female female relationships, and what have you. And if our goal is to rebuild a nation and rebuild a people, we have got to get some help from each other through this. and get these taboos off the table so we can start healing ourselves. So I just want to look at a really, really brief slideshow. This won't last long. And I want to show you a brief clip that was very, that Jay-Z was on, talking about mental health. And then we'll move into a discussion phase. So let's take a look here. There we go. All right. So we want to tear down taboos, and we want to tear down taboos that are really terrorizing our people. And we want to seek this mental healing so we can rebuild our nation. So I just want to show a little data. So if Jones told you I'm a science guy, I love data. If I don't see the data, I don't believe anything. Okay. Show me the numbers first, then I'll believe you. So let me show you some numbers that might blow your mind a little bit. So between 1997 and 2018, African Americans were 22% more likely than the general population to have a mental health crisis. We're 25% more likely to have PTSD than general population. In 2017, suicide was the second leading cause of death of African Americans between the ages of 17 and 24. Okay, so that's our young folks. African American females, especially in grades 9 through 12, were 70% more likely to attempt suicide compared to non-Hispanic white females in the same age group. Now you think about the perception around Black folks. Oh, Black folks don't try to kill themselves. That's crazy. That's nuts. The data says otherwise. The data is pointing otherwise. And then a report from the U.S. Surgeon General in 1980 and 1995 shows us that our suicide attempts have increased by 233%. And these are babies between 10 and 14. So our babies are wanting to end it all. So here's just a little big table. So this is the table about suicidal ideation. Nothing major here. Suicidal ideation is just a fancy term for people who think about suicide. So comparatively speaking, Black folks think about suicide on a whole about less. Men in particular, women are about even with white women. But here's the red flags that went from my head when I saw this from the CDC. Is that of all those who think about suicide, Black folks are much more likely across the board to actually attempt it, and particularly young Black folks in between the ages of the grades of 7th grade and early college. And so you see here, particularly our Black females are almost twice as likely if they think of suicide to actually carry it out. Now, by the grace of God, they're not as successful as their white counterparts in completing it, but this is still an alarming statistic to me, at least. And here's just some data real quick on looking at African Americans in particular who receive mental health services. And if you see, as a function of the population in 2018, which is the last year I can find data on it, Black folks are about 8% of us who really needed to seek it, sought it, compared to about 19% of white folks. When it comes to prescription medication, about 6% of us are medicated, about 15% of white folks are medicated. And of those who had a major depressive episode in the past year, how many went to seek treatment? And this could be medication, therapy, support groups, online talk therapy, whatever you want to say. About 60% of us did, about 70% of white folks did. So if we look at it across the board, essentially, we're functioning depressants, essentially. I know you've heard the term of functioning alcoholics. I like to think of the term, we're functioning depressants. We're functioning, but we're all depressed. We're all down. We're all struggling. But if we want to be in any position to rebuild ourselves and rebuild what we want to do, we have to be of sound mind, body, and spirit to be prepared. So I want to show you really quickly a clip I found on YouTube. This is Jay-Z and Van Jones talking about criminal justice reform, but they got on the subject of mental health. This is about 3 minutes, not very long. I just want to show it to you really quickly. Hopefully you'll be able to hear. Should be fine.
College, I think in the Bronx, I'm almost sure. And I've seen this story so many times, and I haven't seen it in the case of Khalif. I thought it had a happy ending. He came home. He went through the worst. He got through it all. He came home. He was pursuing. He was in college. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, it was like he had committed suicide.
You know, mental health, trauma, PTSD is so rampant in our community. But, you know, as scared as black folks are of the cops, we even more scared of therapists. Like, we're not trying to go to therapy.
Yeah, it's a stigma.
It's a stigma. It's a stigma, and people are dying. You went to therapy. You talk about it. How did you get over the stigma of going to therapy and then talking about it? Because you might help you might save a life just talking about that.
Well, as you grow, you realize the ridiculousness of the stigma attached to it. It's like, what? You just talk to someone about your problems, you know? And I think actually it should be in our schools. You know, I think children have the most going on. Their mind are not fully developed, and, you know, teenagers, and you're drinking and you're doing damage to your brain, and, you know, all these things are happening to you, and you don't know how social anxiety and all these things are happening to you, and you don't have the language.
That's right.
You don't have the language to navigate it. How can you navigate it? How can you know when a guy is bullying you? All you have to do is say, man, you okay? It could change the whole thing. You know, so as opposed
those kind of tools and skills can get out of therapy, which we don't have enough of in our community. Look, we are going to come back more with.
I saw that and I was like, dang, that is a really damning indictment of us as a people, that we're more scared of therapists than we are the cops. And if that's true, holy hell, we have some work to do here. And so I wanted to talk about myself just real briefly. So through my journey, how I got to this point and how I'm here. So Jones was telling you I have a long way to go. It's true, I do. But when I was in college and in early part of medical school, I was at UNC Chapel Hill, and I was doing fine. I was doing great academically, but there was just some weird things going on. I was having the ability to stay up for long periods of time and not have to sleep and eat and things like that. And I was studying for my boards after my second year of medical school. I'm preparing for my boards, which is, if you don't know anything about boards, it's like the SAT, but on steroids ×2. It's a 10-hour exam nonstop, and you're just bombarded with questions all day. And this is like the make or break exam. If you kill the exam, you can do surgery. If you don't do well on the exam, well, depends on what you're going to get into. So you know, and Cherry, she can explain it to you. It's a really intense exam. And so I've always had the ability to work really long hours and not really think about it. Well, come to find out, one of my homegirls who had stayed with me while I was studying for the boards said, Carlton, you've been up for 3 straight days. This is not normal. You ain't good. Like, what do you mean? You know, I'm in the zone. I'm not thinking anything about it. Then I started noticing other things, the small things, like I'm forgetful, I'm scatterbrained, I'm putting things in wrong places, I'm forgetting stuff. And then there was a snowstorm later that year after I took my boards, and I was on a rotation. And I had been up studying for our shelf exam, which is the final exam for finishing a rotation. And they found me naked in the snow. I don't know how I got there. I still, to this day, don't know how I got there. I was butt-ass naked in the snow. Now, today it's hilarious. Jones, you can go ahead and laugh at it. It's funny as hell now. But, you know, I mean, yeah, it's funny as hell now. My black ass was butt-ass naked in the snow in North Carolina. Don't know how I got there. Don't know what I was doing out there. But, and that was kind of the final, like, yo, you need to get fixed. You need to go get help. And so, you know, I've been on this long journey of getting help. And I've been through, I think, 12 psychiatrists and 22. I know, Brother Muhammad, I'm sorry. Things happen, bro. You know, when you're not tuned into yourself, this is what happens to you. It's true. And so I had 22, I went through 12 psychiatrists, 22 therapists roughly, and support groups. And then finally I've got on a good regiment. I have a great Black psychiatrist, great Black therapist, and a great Black support group that we have that we're meeting on Zoom right now. And it's working great. I'm going to go back to medical school and finish. But it took me years to figure out what the hell was going on. And the danger is because in this system, it's extremely frustrating because it's hard for the system to tease out what is our mental health and what is just cultural issues. So I kind of want to stop there because I really want you guys to kind of have a discussion, you know, about those issues. How do we get through to people? How do we talk to people? How do we get people to think about these issues more holistically? Because we cannot lose any more soldiers on battlefield. Let's put it that way. No, we're in a battle, we're in a war. Well, hell, we're not even getting to the damn battlefield, judging by the statistics. We can't even get out there and fight these struggles. So that's all I had to start out with. I kind of wanted you guys to talk, and then we can fill in the gaps as we go.
Sister Danny, you up?
Make sure my mic. Okay, my mic is on. Carlton, I am so emotional, just by what you have shared, because as you said, the stigma of acknowledging and taking care of our mental health is so strong, in our community. And just not even understanding, as you said, what are symptoms, what are signs, what are things that I need to be conscious of. And, these are the reasons why I have always just so strongly rejected this, myth of the strong Black woman. I hate it because it doesn't give us permission to feel and to acknowledge, the pain that we are in, depression, whatever. And it's just so destructive. So I'm really delighted to hear that you have these discussions with your students, because it's so necessary. And I know that, the world doesn't change that much. But when I think about my, teenage years and even in college, this world is so much more hostile, so much more difficult for them than it ever was for us. So the need is so great. So I applaud you. And I thank you so much for sharing your story, because I know it's one that can resonate with many of us, if not personally, with family and friends. So thank you for giving a voice.
Yeah, I mean, and what scares me about our kids even more is the fact that they're deaf. So like when I went through my drama, Twitter and Facebook, Facebook was around, but that was really it. There was no Twitter, there was no IG really, there was no Snapchat. So basically, your life is documented. So these kids don't have any safe place to discuss these issues. Like, hey, where can I talk about this with somebody? Where can I get it when and nobody's gonna blast me on social media about it? So they have a nonstop barrage of social media and constant stimulation. Because at least when I went through my drama in 2010, 2011, I at least had a way to unplug and get away from it and walk away from it, because there was nowhere near the amount of stimulation I was getting. Now, oh my God, I mean, I really feel for these children, because they really have no escape from it. And so by the time they have a mistake or have an issue, everybody knows about it. Everybody knows everybody's in their business. So I do fear for them for that.
It's almost surreal to be here talking about this, especially with you, and to hear what you just said as far as the students of today. From my perspective, that was how I viewed you guys. That you don't have a place to unplug. You don't have and I don't know if you remember this conversation that we had when you were getting ready to go, and this was really the reason why I had put you in contact with Mr. Roberson. Once again, Vernell, that's my 7th grade teacher. I know that you just came in. I remember telling you, and I remember being angry for a while at you, and I never expressed it. One of the questions that people would ask me is, how did I make it through The Ohio State University sane and whole? And my answer, and Vernell can attest to this, that I hung out with the same cats that I went to undergrad with. Okay, I never hung out with those in the master's program, the PhD program. I never hung out with them. I hung out with what would be the equivalent of the most ignorant Negroes that you could ever imagine. The type of cats that would get arrested, and I would have to go and bail them out. When Damon Thomas comes here, he's one of them. Okay. They kept me normal. They kept me sane. And I remember having this conversation with you and telling you, yo, stay close, because you're going to need us. You're gonna need those who know you. You know, my mother would always say it this way. She would say, I need you to come home because I need to look in your face. And it's in many ways and we don't articulate it this way, but it is a mental health check, okay? Because we know each other. And now somebody you just met might say, you know what, that's just how he is. Nah, I know this Negro, okay? Let me look in your face. And I can tell how you do. And that was my thing. I said, now, if he stays close, it's going to be some bumps in the road because, and Carlton had it a little different because he was so doggone brilliant. Okay. He was the smartest Negro that he had probably ever come across. Okay. And those smart Negroes begin to think that they're unicorns of some kind. Okay. And I tried to set the board because you will have a psychological break if you are not anchored with those who know you best, those who can just call, you can call and they can call on you, and just to hear your voice. There are people who you know so well that you can tell in their voice if they're doing well or if they're not doing well. You know, being Black in this society, we need that. It's a must for us to remain in the land of productivity. Okay. Sister Danielle has her hand up. Jump right in. Sister Danielle, is she frozen? Okay. She has a nice pose going there, but she seems to be frozen. Okay, she's back now. Sister Danielle, you're on.
I was frozen. I thought y'all was frozen.
No, no, it's you.
um, Carlton, I appreciate your story and sharing, and I think the answer to your question is, what you said, functional depression. Yes, we absolutely have a fear of therapy, fear of the medical industry as a whole, which is inclusive of that as well. But I think what you said hit it on the head, because the inability to translate what depressive episodes look like, I think is another key issue that we need to deal with, because sometimes the textbook does not translate for us. By no means I am not in the medical field, but I'm pretty versed in many psychological theories and things of that nature. And it's the textbook, number one, is not accessible by language. The jargon that's used is not accessible to the masses. And so by virtue of doing what you're doing right now, sharing your story, is how we get people on board with the idea of it. Second, we need more Black therapists in the field. They're there, but we need more of that to, again, share stories, but also what to look for. Personally, I didn't think depression was real until I hit my 30s. I didn't think it was real. Again, I never had that conversation in the context of a family. I had a dysfunctional family and I saw a lot of stuff, but I didn't put the two together, right? So I think what you're doing is amazing. I hope we see more of this, even with Sister Misty. We need to share our stories. And I think that working with children and giving them that voice, giving them the language, giving them, the examples so that they can identify with, I make it a point to, when I talk to kids, try to give them language that's on their level, kind of like what Jay-Z was saying. They don't have the words to kind of put this stuff together, especially particularly now. Like, if you didn't think kids have issues, look at your children now. Look at their behavior and how it's changing. And that's the one thing, I don't know, I can go on and on, but I'm excited because I appreciate what you're saying and what you're doing. But I think, number one, Black families, I think, have to be more vulnerable We don't talk about finances. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about the things that will allow you to live a healthy and productive life, and it's hurting us in multiple ways. But thank you very much for sharing your story.
Sister Danny.
No problem. No, and I want to feel that because we are not talking about those issues at all. I mean, and this is an across the board issue. We can't talk about God. We can't talk about money. We can't talk about mental health. I mean, God, what are we talking about then? I mean, what's the point of having a family or building a family or building a community if we're not going to discuss these issues? And that's been my major problem I've seen, especially with Black men. We're building these communities and these great allies, awesome sauce. I'm happy about that, but what are we doing with them? And we're not going to go into these issues. Hey, man, listen, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I'm getting through it, but what do you think is something I can do? And the thing is, the good news is there are more Black therapists. There are a lot of them in the pipeline. They may not be, MDs, but you're seeing a lot of Blacks going into social work and becoming licensed counselors because of that. You're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing Blacks getting psychology PhDs, which is great. So at least the data is showing in the pipeline we've got Black people. We have the cavalry's coming. So we have a lot of allies, and they're even going to places that you wouldn't expect. They're going to places like Mississippi and Alabama and the Deep South, and really trying to get their hands into it and put their hands in. So that's the great news, But we have to go seek them out. They may or may not be evident to us. They may not be easy to find. You might have to go out of your way to find them a little bit, but they are there and they make a difference. Because I was misdiagnosed 5 times before I got a proper diagnosis. 5 times, and I've been in the medical industry. I mean, I went to med school. I know all the different things. In the moment when I was ill, I was very vulnerable, and I didn't have enough sense to advocate properly to say, hey, this is wrong. Try this. I got put through shock therapy 3 times. It was not effective. It actually made me worse. It made me worse of anything. And again, that's the danger of not staying close to your people. And as Jones was saying earlier, not having those close friendships and have people around you. Because I mean, again, I've always kind of sort of been off on my own because I mean, I was always a little weird. Let's put it that way. I was weird and different. Jones is going to shake his head and say yes. Okay. So I've always been weird and different. So I've always been off on my own a little bit. But when you get to certain places in life, you really can't isolate yourself. And Black men, we do a terrible job of isolating ourselves and trying to be what we call the Sigma male, the lone wolf. I can do it on my own. I'll figure it out. I've always figured it out. There's going to come a time and a place where you can't figure it out on your own. You won't figure it out on your own. It's no way you can figure it out on your own. Mm-hmm. You're going to need some allies who are going to be able to maybe better articulate what they're seeing in yourself that you can't see in yourself in that moment. Because again, it's very easy, especially somebody like me who likes to work and work really hard and work long hours, to miss things. It's very easy to miss things. And so I tell anybody I'm dating, like, listen, you might see, if you see something, say something, because I'm not going to believe you in the moment. Okay? Because I'm thinking, everything's good. Are the bills paid? Great. Are things done? Great. It's easy to miss stuff. And it's just a blind spot of mine. I'm working through that blind spot of being much more conscientious of stuff and recognizing signs. Oh shit, something's not right here. We gotta fix this. But still, it's a blind spot, and everybody has their blind spot or two. And so, so that's the one thing I do.
All right, Sister Danny, you up?
Just adding to what Danielle said and what Brother Carlton said initially, it's so it's so deep, because in so many wonderful things, of course, that the church has done for our community, there are so many things that have been ingrained in us that are destructive, in my opinion, one being that you can pray yourself out of depression, and if that is not the most destructive thing that you could tell someone, and have people feel burdened and embarrassed and spiritually, unfit, because they can't pull themselves out of this, so, depression is not, oh, you just feeling sorry for yourself. It's not that, so the education is so important. And of course, like so many things we've talked about, the self-awareness, I know, I don't know who watches Married at First Sight, right? But last season in New Orleans, they had a guy on there and he told his wife, I deal with depression, this is what it is, this is what it looks like. Similar to what you said, Carlton, these are the things, that you might see, that when you see these, this means that this is what I need from you. And what a wonderful conversation, but what a difficult conversation to have because of the stigma and the lack of understanding and the ignorance that we're met with. So I yield.
Yeah, and I will say this about the church real quick. Because when I was going through it, what was the first thing people told me to do? You need to go to church. Okay, not necessarily a bad piece of advice. However, the advice I was getting was so bad. So I was so angry. I fell away from the faith for probably 6 or 7 years. I didn't go to church for 6 or 7 years. I refused to go because I was so angry at how misguided I was by my Black church. I thought, hey, Army was good information. You're gonna get me ready. Yeah. Did you pray? Well, are you paying your tithes? Are you doing all these different things that really didn't play a big role in my situation? I had some real shit going on. This was not a cultural problem. This was a real diagnosable mental health issue, and I needed help. And I was given terrible advice. And so I refused to go for a very, very, very long. It took me a long time to get the courage to go back to church again because I was just so bitterly angry, at the clergy for misguiding me and pointing me in the wrong direction. And so, that being said, now I'm in a situation now in my faith life that, okay, I understand. I'm there to advocate and say, hey, hey, look, when you talk to somebody who's having a mental health crisis, you say, listen, you give them a spiritual answer, absolutely, but you also point them to a therapist or somebody who can help them or help them out more. You can get them to a therapist who believes what they believe. I happen to find a Black woman Catholic therapist. So we mesh like this. We're right here. We're talking about the faith. It makes sense for us. So we can go there about that. But I wouldn't go, it'd be like me going to a mechanic to get a ham sandwich. It may or may not work. It may or may not be good, but I wouldn't do that. Also, I wouldn't go to a teacher, to fix my car more than likely. So, let's use some common sense here. So, I really wish and hope that Black clergy especially stay in their damn lane and know where the line is, because you're really harming a lot of our folks who really, really need help, and they have a position. And what makes me more angry is they have a position of trust in our community, a strong position of trust, and you're breaking and violating that trust with your bad advice. And I don't have time for it.
Sister Vernell, you're up.
Yeah. Well, James, this is a good conversation to have, and we Black people need to be talking about this more and more. I want to address the whole issue of Black clergy, because I think this is where education makes the difference. Is this Black clergy, did they go to seminary school? Because if they did, then they would have had courses on pastoral care and counseling, and would know how to direct and encourage people to go and get the help that they need, versus somebody who didn't and they're just winging it. I had a situation back in 2019 where I was accosted while doing my job at an event at a Black church, in the basement of a church, where a guy accosted me, touched me inappropriately in front of a room full of people where there were witnesses, and everybody was shocked and astounded. And so I feel like here's the difference between clergy who knows how to handle these situations and those who don't. The pastor of the church where this occurred, he orchestrated witnesses to lie to the police who investigated it, so that, in fear of losing the grant money that was pouring into the church. Horrible, right? His advice to me before that happened, before, the lying to the police, his advice to me was, well, Vernell, if I was you, I wouldn't have let him touch me. That was his advice to me, right? On the flip side of that, my own pastor who, and I feel like this is the difference, the fact that he, was educated, had courses on how to, respond to people, who are having some trauma, because I was traumatized. I was traumatized. I was, I started kind of getting depressed. I had like this seething anger that would wake me up at night. I would wake up in the middle of the night filled with just seething anger. Um, and when it first happened, after it first happened, a few days after it happened, I knew I wasn't okay. I knew, but I went to go see him, my pastor, and he sat me down and he said, "Well, Renelle, have you reported this to the police?" Which I hadn't done yet. I reported it to my job, who reported it to the grant funder and, all that stuff, but I hadn't reported to the police. And I was feeling some kind of way about doing that because, the police don't always, take women seriously about these things. I reported it to the police. I ended up getting a counselor, going to see a therapist who was Christian, a Black woman who was Christian, and I knew that I was so not okay. I needed both of them. I needed her, and I needed my pastor, and so there were times where in one week I'm going to see her and then I'm going to see my pastor, and sometimes I was hoping for him to give me some different advice because the advice she was giving me was too hard. Like, I don't want to do this. But they were always echoing each other, with the counsel and advice that they gave me, always echoing each other. And I really do think it is because, it is the difference between one clergy person who had those courses on pastoral care and counseling versus one who did not, I because I agree, that I've had friends of mine who have been given horrible advice by clergy when they have been encountering mental health issues, and I would say, please don't hold that against the church, like, please don't hold that against the church. But has this person had any training in this? Has this person had any courses in this? Don't even talk to them. Like, just because they know the Bible doesn't mean that they should be counseling people, on anything. If they don't know how to talk with people, about that and about the issues and challenges, because I think that for people who are religious, like, I think it's very difficult to separate out their mental health and their spirituality. And so sometimes when they can talk with a clergy person, who can talk to them from a spiritual perspective in a way that supports their mental health, their journey to mental wellness, that can make a difference for people who are religious, um, and so I think that I'm with you guys that we do have to be careful with Black clergy. But I in my own experience, I felt like the difference was one who had training and one who had not.
Well, I can agree with that totally. I mean, and I definitely, I mean, my priest has a PhD in theology, so I mean, he's well versed, he's well read on these issues, so he knows what to say. And he's like, "Yo, this is where he'll tell." His saying is, "Okay, Carlton, this is where I get off. I can't help you past this point. Okay, you need to go deal with that someplace else because spiritually, I can tell you what to do from a spiritual standpoint from our church teachings, but I can't tell you that. But that's a mental health that you're gonna have to work through with your therapist or your psychiatrist or whomever you happen to be working, or go to support groups and things like that." So I like the fact that we're having a marriage of that. That, hey, we can complement each other, we can work together and that type of things. And one thing I am grateful for is, for instance, my priest did talk to my therapist one time, and they had like a 30-minute conversation, and it was probably one of the most rewarding things ever because it really transformed my therapy experience, because now she knew where I was coming from. She knew what was important to me, what was not important to me, what things I really needed to feel successful, safe, and heard. So that plays a really, really important. And those who understand that make a massive difference. And you can really help somebody, but you can really damage somebody.
You know, in many ways, when I'm listening to you, and I know that you're heavy into religion, and I know you're a man of faith, and I also know that Sister Vernell is right now pursuing her doctorate in theology. Being raised within a Baptist church, I come out of the Baptist tradition that God is omnipotent and omniscient. In many ways, there's a part of me that is hearing that he's not omniscient, that he's not able to handle the mental health aspect. And that's what I'm hearing. And it's kind of, I can see how those who are less learned, less cerebral, would get caught up in the idea of just pray about it. Just lay it on the altar. And this just popped in my head, seeing that when they have the altar call and all of these people rush forward, and some of them actually lay prostrate across the altar, seeking some help, seeking a solution to whatever stress or strain. And it's almost always has a mental component to it, be it economic, be it finances, be it family, be it all of that. It's weighing heavier and heavier upon your, and we'll say our soul. But what I'm hearing is that it's the mind, it's the mental health aspect of it. Being a Black man in America, once again coming out of the Black Baptist tradition, you're taught to carry that load and not to be very expressive about it, not to share with anyone, about it. And it's and as I talk about this, and I'm kind of talking through it, talking through my ideas, it makes perfect sense to me now how so many brothers succumb to addiction, because in every way they are looking for some, even if it's a temporary escape from the weight, and like I said, I'm working through as I talk about this, that may very well be why I need to be so structured. It allows me to avoid some things. One of the I get up and I go lift at like 5 a.m. every morning. And someone asked me this question, and it may very well be dealing with, psychological release. They said, "What are you thinking about when you're lifting?" And I just looked at them. I said, "You know what? Absolutely nothing." And that may very well be a major coping mechanism that I have to avoid. Y'all know where I work at, and I'll leave it at that. I yield.
No, I know, but seriously, that's a great way of looking at it. And I think I see, I get what you're saying, Dr. Jones. And what I always tell the Black people when I talk about these issues with black people, especially kids, I say, okay, guys, if you came to me and said, "Mr. Singleton, I have cancer," or "My grandma has Alzheimer's," or "Hey, somebody's suffering with X, Y, and Z condition," you wouldn't tell them to go pray it away. You wouldn't tell them that. You wouldn't tell them to go pray. You say, "No, go see a damn neurologist and go get some help." Hey, no, you having a stroke, you're having a heart attack. Go to the damn emergency room and go get some help immediately. Do not wait. And so we have to have the same mentality around mental health. If somebody's in a mental health crisis, telling them to go pray it away is the wrong thing to tell them in that moment. Yes, prayer, maybe a quick prayer before you go is a good thing to arm them. But guess what? Once I remember, and when I was first having issues and first noticing my issues and first trying to figure out what was wrong, I was going to altar call every week. I feel better for about 2 or 3 hours, and I'm right back in my same darkness. darkness, in my same place, frustrated, mad, angry at the world. Why is this going on? Why am I suffering so? Why did this happen? Now I'm back into that now. So, it has to have its place. Yes, God is able. God is omniscient, omnipresent. He can do all, fix all things, but also too, God also gives you burdens to carry as well. And it's to glorify God. So that from my theology, that's where it comes from, that I'm glorifying God by carrying these burdens I have on my back.
No,
It's frustrating, it's annoying, it drives me absolutely bonkers some days, but I feel like me carrying them and talking through them and working with other people and trying to point things out to people is my way of promoting the kingdom of God. But that's how I see it. But I know I can understand why somebody maybe who's not as well educated or doesn't understand or has maybe a more literalist view of the Bible won't get what I have to say here.
One of the things as I'm listening to you that popped in my head was a recent show I watched. Older gentleman who was dealing with cancer, and he was in Memphis, Tennessee, if I remember correctly. And I'm sure he was going through some semblance of treatment, but there came a moment where I guess they stopped the treatment. And his entire church family, they were just praying and praying and praying and hoping. And by the end of the show, he was dead. Where do people, and this is just a general question, not aimed at anyone, almost a rhetorical question. Where do you put your faith after you put it in God and you end up heartbroken? Sister Danielle, your hand has been up. Go right ahead.
Good question, James. I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words now. With all due respect, to those who are religious, no matter the denomination or faith, we just have to hold religious leaders accountable, because as what Carlton has said, more harm has been done than good. And if it's your calling to deal with people, you need to be well versed in human behavior. That's like if I am a K through 12 teacher, I'm teaching the curriculum, but I better sure know how to identify behaviors that may stem from the household that a student is acting out or is depressed, you know what I'm saying? And the advancement that we have now in knowledge and technology, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for that. Prime example, I was very much into, the church at one point in my life. And at like 21, 22, I was an altar worker where people are coming up to the altar, are disclosing their secrets, their pain. I'm 21, 22. I don't have no life experience. I don't have any wisdom to give to these people. I'm laying hands, don't know what I'm doing, probably transferring stuff to them, and for real, I'm just being for real, and vice versa. You have ministers on the line transferring to people because of the lack of information and knowledge. There's no excuse for that. We ain't in 1901, we're not under the big tent under Azusa or whatever, it's real. And again, in my own personal experience, I know it's anecdotal. I'm not saying it's across the board, but I have seen a lot of damage that have come out of, ministry within the walls of religious institutions. So, I don't know where you begin with that. I don't know how you transform that. I hope those who are in the faith that have the knowledge will go back to your ministries and do that kind of work and explain. But people are coming out worse, and again, furthering the disconnect, with seeking help, because oftentimes what you hear in religious circles is the disconnect between the body and the mind. And just like what James has said, when he worked out, to me, that was a spiritual moment, because there's a connection between all of you when you are physically active. But what we do in the church is we say the body is down here, the spirit is up here. There's no interaction, and that's bullshit. There is, So there has to be some kind of change within these religious circles, because you are in charge of souls and bodies,
Yeah.
but your body is present. You'll get to the, the by and by later. Your body is here. Your body is here. So deal with the body, learn about the body. And that even goes to me with understanding how the body works and functions, getting into healthy conversation about even, physical health as well. So that's my 2 cents. I apologize for getting a little crunk there.
And we have evidence now, physiologically speaking, about what Jones was saying about his little moment, that like even the hippocampus and the amygdala of the brain grow during exercise. And what I mean, they're what we call hypertrophy, but not hypertrophy. They grow bigger, they get larger. The neurons in that part of the brain grow, which is evident, and which will provide protection against major depressive episode, possibly. So we're seeing new evidence, physiologically speaking, of how that changes. It's the same effects that you get when somebody's going through a Pentecostal revival service. It's the same neurons being stimulated during a workout. And I'm dead serious. And so, essentially, if that's your thing, if that's what you need in that moment, take advantage and use it, because you're really stimulating the same neurological pathways in the end.
Well, thank you for that, my brother. One of the undercurrents that I'm hearing, and it flows from a story that the man that I really do consider my pastor, the Reverend Dr. Johnny R. Heckert, who is going on to be with the Lord. Pastor Heckert told us a story about going to speak at a revival. He said it was a week-long revival. He shows up. He's going to speak on like Thursday, and he shows up on Monday to support the other preachers who are going to be there. And he says that as he walks in, he can hear people whispering, "That's Dr. Heckert right there. Now that brother deep, that's Dr." And the pastor who was up there speaking apparently was offended, because he begins to say, "Education ain't nothing. Education ain't nothing. God tells me what to say. I'm connected to God, not no education. Ain't no book gonna tell me what." And I think that we have a lot of that occurs, and you're dealing with eternity. And so is there a way to get God called me, and he therefore is going to download into me, and I don't need to study or learn nothing? Can you get those type of people out of the pulpit? Because if the public performance is that porous, Lord only knows what counseling is going to be like. Behind the scenes, what could they possibly pour into you? Because there's a humility that I believe comes with knowing more, because it impresses upon you the idea of how little you know in actuality, and how much more there is for you to learn. I believe that Sister Vernell was next, and then Sister Al Hassan, and then Brother Muhammad. So go right ahead.
I'm gonna answer that question that you just asked about that. Get that whole mentality out of there. God will tell me what to say. I don't need an education. I don't need to go to school. That's crazy. In in more like organized churches, like United Methodist Church, Presbyterians, Lutherans, and Catholics, there is a requirement to have an education, to have a master's of divinity. A lot of those denominations have their own seminary schools, like the AME Church has their own seminary school, Payne Theological right here in Ohio, and others. And to be a pastor and to be ordained in those church organizations, you need that Master's of Divinity, where a part of that is those courses, those pastoral care courses. That's what they call them, which incorporates the counseling classes, and stuff like that. So in those denominations, they have that already. That's a requirement, it's in a lot of the independent like Baptist churches, independent Black Baptist churches, where there's no requirement for, education at all. I go to a Baptist church like that, and I hear that all of the time. When I shared that I had gotten into this doctorate program at seminary school, I'm teaching Sunday school, my Sunday school class, adult women Sunday school class, I'm teaching, and I got ministers in my class, and one of them says that very same thing right there out loud, and I'm like, what, that day I couldn't hold my tongue. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, the Bible says, study to show thyself approved, and so therefore, if God gave you a gift and God gave you a calling, you're supposed to do your best to develop yourself to walk into that calling, and that involves educating yourself. What I wanted to say though, is that one of the things that I think goes wrong with the Black church is the function that religion has played in the history of our people. And in the history of our people, religion, faith, has been a tool to help our people, our ancestor endure, to help them survive all of the things that they encountered, to help them survive slavery, how they get through. And so, and I think that whole endurance factor, it's like it's sort of kind of passed down to us. I think that's why so many of us, even those of us Black people who are not religious right now, we know that there was some part of religion in our upbringing, from mama and them, grandmama and them, and this whole endure, and we can endure. We're strong people and we will endure. And I think that's connected to the stigma associated with seeking mental health help, because we endure because we're Black. But I think that at the point that we're in now, we need to look to our faith to do something else, and we need to look to our faith to empower and overcome, to not just endure, not just survive, but to empower and to thrive, and so you will, and so I think that part of it, connects, with good mental health. If you need help, like Carlton says, when people need help, we do not send people with cancer to veterinarians. We should not send people in a mental health crisis to someone who doesn't know how to deal with a mental health crisis. And I think, like Carlton's pastor, one of the most important things that a clergy person can do is to know when this is out of their depth, and to refer. I yield.
One of the common things that I see on TV, people trying to execute a exorcism upon people who are having, some issues, So yeah, that's definitely the underbelly of it that we need to talk about as well. Brother Mom.
Remember the dude who was dude with the coat, the dude with the coat.
Benny Hinn,
white dude was hitting people with the coat and locking demons out of them. Yeah.
Benny Hinn. Is that his name, Benny Hinn?
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. Knock you down from across the room, get you straightened out.
I've been a part of that. I have participated in those kind of things. There was a young lady slithering on the ground like a snake, and we're all centered around her trying to pull out the demon. 21 again, 21 years old, have no clue about anything, but I'm trying to pull out a demon out of somebody.
And
Yeah.
even like spiritually, like only like experienced like priest or something should be trying to do stuff like that. Like, yeah, someone would let a 21-year-old person be responsible. Yeah.
But see, the girl was depressed. She was depressed and having a moment, but my tradition was Baptist, but college I got into Pentecostal. So there's no conversation of, you got a demon, you're possessed, we're laying hands and pulling this out of you. And afterward, nothing. There was no follow-up to the girl, no nothing. She was devastated after that, you know, in a college campus, in a dorm full of people are watching her slithering on the ground, you know, and we so-called, you know, doing God's work.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I participated in stuff like that. No aftercare, no. I'm sorry.
Brother Muhammad?
You know, I did a teaching on this, and one thing that I know dealing in pharmacy, when I really understood, because I was one of those prior to going to school, I was one of those who thought that the medication actually, you know, really stops the pain and you feeling a whole lot better. And after I learned that, no, you still got the pain, it's just that the medication is on the nerve, so you don't feel it. You're not getting the signal to your brain to say, hey, I'm still hurting here, you know. And then I look at depression and I said, well, what really is this? This is darkness. This is darkness. Now, my next question was, okay, since this is darkness, the question is darkness real? Right? And after I thought about it and I came away with no, darkness is not real. It's just the absence of light. And so my next thing was, well, then if we're depressed and that's in a state of darkness, it is absent without light because we just don't know what's next to do. What is it that we're supposed to do? How is it that we're supposed to do it to move us from this darkness back into the light? And so understanding that, you know, really just having the ability to talk to somebody that you trust and that person trusts you, and there's that love there, that they're not going to take what you say and go run and tell somebody else, but they're going to really be there with you and go step by step until you're back in the light again. And that way, you don't need no medication. We need people to help us with the way that we think, And I think that if we can continue to have, you know, spaces like that, so that we can be able to know one another and help each other just like that, because everything that's in creation is something that we can learn how God made it and what is its purpose. So knowing that darkness ain't real is just the absence of light. So you're depressed because you don't know what it is that you need to do, or you don't know how to do it. And sometimes it's that fear of, well, what if it don't work? Or what if this, or what if that? And we got to do it together. So I think once we repair the trust in the community, a lot of that where you got to go and get this medication that you really don't need, but the being able to really sit down and talk to somebody that you can trust and will be a true friend, you know, or true brother or sister to us, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. None of us can say that we're absolutely sane living in America, going through trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma, you know, and it's like, well, where do we turn to? Where do we go to? Because everybody is injured, you know, so it's a lot of work that we can do and begin that process. It just starts with us working with each other. And I'll rest my mic.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to jump in there and say that I think when it comes to depression, and I think as well as anxiety, like there are different things that trigger that. I believe that there are situational things that occur that can trigger depression and anxiety, and then I think that there are actual chemical imbalances that people can have in their brain that triggers that. So I definitely believe when it comes to you know, situational things that bring on, you know, depression and anxiety, I do think having that love in your life and someone good to talk to, Lord knows I have, I have become depressed that have been triggered by grief over a lost loved one, and this pandemic has brought upon anxiety, upon leaving that house, and so having people to talk and believe in like talk therapy and having someone to talk to, whether it's a good friend or someone else, helps. But when it comes to actual chemical imbalances in the brain, and that whole biological piece, I think it's going to take more than Carlton, your lips are moving, but we can't
Yeah,
hear
I
you.
was just going to say, Brother Muhammad makes a good point. And that's where we need to figure out teasing that cultural things out. So for me, yeah, I've got a chemical imbalance going on in my head that I have to treat. I can't walk away from it. I can't avoid that. So I have to take some medication sometimes. Now, let me say this: the medication that I've taken has definitely been cut back drastically. One, I'm in balance spiritually, emotionally, physically. A lot of things are organized in my life. There's certain things I cannot do. I can't be up crazy late hours like I used to be anymore, because I know that's a trigger for me. Because if I stay up really, really long hours and work really, really late hours, I can go into an episode. So 10:30 lights are out, TV's off, simulation's done. I gotta go to sleep. I know that I gotta be up by 5:30 in the morning. I don't care if I'm doing nothing. I don't give a damn if I'm just getting up to go to the mailbox. I am getting up at 5:30 in the morning, and I have to go. I gotta go get some go get the mail. Just do something. Practicing good habits, putting my clothes up, brushing my teeth, shaving, just doing things consistently, good habits every single day are really, 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 really important. And so some of us need that help, need that medication help, just because, it helps us really function. Helps us function more clearly. And there's certain things I know I can't do. In my family, alcoholism runs rampant in my family. Why? A lot of us got the same issues going on in the family, especially in the men. A lot of us have it. And as I look back, and actually I went and got genetic testing done by one of my homeboys who's a psychiatrist, and he says, you have this gene defect, and that might explain your condition. I wonder how far back this goes. Sure, it's societal. Sure, this is you're a black man in America. You should have some problems, some mental health issues. That's natural. You're probably going to have some mental imbalances if you're a black man in America. You're having this for that issue. But there's a genetic component that goes back, and black men especially have dealt with it by drugs and alcohol. And if we just got to the root of it and treated that, and got them through these episodes and through these crises without having to resort to drugs, alcohol, and other vices, we really can survive, thrive, and succeed, and build what we want to build in this nation. And so that's how I see it. But does everybody need to be medicated? Hell no. It's more of a holistic of it, and that's why I want to get you. We need a holistic view of black mental health. Some of us need to be medicated. Some of us need to talk to somebody and need reliability. Some of us don't need to live in this country anymore, and that's how they don't get their mental peace. Okay, and whatever that happens to be, but I think we have to be able to do that via the TV.
Sister Regina, you're up.
Yeah, good evening. We've moved on from this point a little bit, but as we were talking about, like, what do you do where do you assign your faith when God doesn't come through, or when God doesn't save you, or and what we rely on and what we respect from our religious leaders and what we actually get. And I just want to make some space for the idea of spirituality and the fact that our connection to God, our connection to divinity is so much bigger than any one religion. Like, it is just, God is just so much bigger and better than Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever. Those are all just our tiny, feeble attempts at understanding what omnipotence really is. And I don't know, I just felt like I had to interject that when we talk about being disappointed by pastors, because we're not disappointed by God in that moment. We're disappointed by a human. in the shortcomings of a human. And I think we need to really call that out and also understand that our relationship, our connection, our expression, and our own inherent omnipotence, because we have that same power. We absolutely have that same power, just like God, to name a thing, to speak a thing into existence. And it starts with naming ourselves, and it starts with knowing ourselves and knowing who and what you really are, and naming yourself and understanding what that means, the power behind your name. And maybe, like, I'm Regina. Okay, I claim it because that's Queen, and it just so happens to be a really powerful name. But maybe your name is Joe, and maybe that doesn't have power for you. But then, like, are you Joe? Like, are you really? Is that your true identity? Yeah, I feel like I start to ramble when I talk about spirituality and how, we can't, especially as Black people, we can't fall prey to religion. It's so much bigger and better than that. We predate religion. We created religion. We brought religion forth to the world. And the religion that we now claim as Christianity, as Islam, etc., all of that is just misinterpreted, exploited, skewed, manipulative version that's been fed back to us, but is not our true spirituality. It does not represent our true divinity. And I'm stopped because I can go on. And no, let me also add, yes, sometimes people need medicine. They do. But there's also this concept that the idea of disease is not really like you have a medical condition. It's really about your physical self is out of alignment with your true spiritual self. And so then you don't have disease. What you have is dis-ease. You're not in ease. You're not in alignment. You're uncomfortable. You're not in alignment with your true self and your true nature. And then, yes, that creates imbalanced conditions within your physical form. But it goes back to that alignment with spirituality, I believe. Just my 2 cents.
One of the questions that I have, and it's aimed directly at you, Carlton, and it's something that just personally I need to know. What led you to, when you went off to Duke in North Carolina, and I tell people all the time, I had a student who was pursuing an MD and a PhD at the exact same time. So don't tell me that HBCU students are subpar. But I'm pretty sure you knew, because I had that conversation with you, to stay close. Why didn't you stay close to us? Because you got frat brothers, you got me, you got an entire department. If nothing else, as you say, you're a bit weird or odd or whatever. If nothing else, people know and cared for you, if for no other reason than those traits. Was it a conscious decision to do that? What was going on? And is there anything that we could have done?
Let me be honest. I mean, I think it was mixed. It was a little bit of hubris mixed with I think it was a bit of hubris mixed with naivety. And what I mean by that is that, I believe, oh, I got this handled. I'm good. Now I'll catch them when I catch them, and not understanding, hey, that one phone call a week, what's going on? Hey, how you doing? Doesn't take a whole lot of time. And that's something I've had to work through and work on. Like, hey, what's going on? Are you good? Yeah, things are good right now. I'm all right. Nothing major. I got so wrapped up in my work that I forgot the part that how I got to the damn party in the first place. That while I was successful at Purview, I had a balanced life. Yeah, I was studying really, really hard. I was preparing a lot. I was working in the lab really really late, but I was going out hanging out with the boys too. Every once in a while, I was getting called weird at the party all the damn time. You know, people were making fun of me. We were having ripping me and ripping me to shreds. That was my release. We played video games. We talked, we chilled, we relaxed. I got away from all that. I put all my energy into my future, and doing that, you know, is dangerous because, you know, I had had setbacks before in life. I had experienced failure before, but the thing is, I had fallen really hard, and I didn't have the slightest idea how I was supposed to get back up, put the pieces back together again. I had no idea what I was supposed to do because I had it all laid out and mapped out. When I met Dr. Jones as a freshman, I said, Dr. Jones, I'm going here, I'm studying this, and I'm going to do this. The end. And up to that point, and he would tell you, I had all my summers planned out. I had planned my degree plan for 6 years in advance when I was a freshman. I was ready for war, and you were not going to knock me off that path. And while I was in the classroom, my method worked. It was perfect. But once I started getting out into the community and seeing patients, and I had to play a game that I was unprepared to play, I needed that release. I needed my friends. Because you weren't going to touch me on the textbook. Because even though I went through all that crisis and I was having a crisis studying for the board, I still scored in the 92nd percentile on my boards. So you weren't going to beat me on the test. You weren't going to beat me academically, but it was the social interactions I was struggling with. And I needed my friends and Dr. Jones and those people to kind of keep me normal so I could still relate to these people. And that's where I got into trouble. I didn't get into trouble academically. And you can go back and look at all my transcripts. My grades were immaculate, but, well, he's distant, he's off. We see something wrong. If you look at the comments from my rotations, it's always the same comment. He seems like he's here, but he's not here. Because I'm struggling with these mental health issues that I didn't understand at the time. And I think it was my hubris because I was so good at my test. And I'm getting that. It's almost like my drug. I'm getting A's on the exam. Yeah. You can't tell me shit in this moment. I'm doing it. And I lost focus. And so people who maybe didn't do as well as me academically who went to PV finished med school because why? They understood those connections and those personal connections, who maybe struggled academically like I didn't do, but they mastered the personal interactives that I didn't master. It took me a lot longer to get to that point than it did them. And so the first 2 years of med school where I'm cruising and they're struggling, it flipped to third and fourth year. Because really it's a political game, essentially, to get through med. At this point, you're just being evaluated on basically on how they feel about you, how they think you're doing, not on what I can show you on the test, because the tests don't lie. So and that's what happened. And when I got in the crisis, I didn't lean back on my anchors. I kind of just said, I'm just going to go further out to sea. Well, I started sinking. By the time I'm screaming for help, nobody could hear.
Okay, wonderful analogy. You know, one of the, oftentimes, and I'm sure that Sister Regina will understand exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm sure all of you will. We often don't know how or why we do what we do, but it kind of just works for us, and we don't have a word to describe it. It just works. And from my initial foray at Ohio State, my uncle Kenneth, he helped me move in, and I'll never forget him saying, stay close, stay close. And that was something that out of all the refrains and all the things that I went through, I always knew to keep people around me that knew me, to keep me normal, so to speak. And Damon, you missed this when we were talking earlier. The idea that I was surrounded by, hoodlums, drug users, alcoholics, some who got locked up, having to call me to come and bail them out. They kept me normal. So I, let me see if I can find let me find the clap thing, put that up. I applaud you, my brother, for for keeping me in the world of niggerdom. I applaud you. I salute you for all that you have done. Key, it is on you. Danielle, is on you.
Um, I think this conversation underscores the necessity for broader definitions again of mental health and defining mental health issues, because a lot of what we're saying, we're all over the place because obviously we're not, professionals in the field, not to my knowledge. But we're talking about situational things, we're talking about spiritual things, we're talking about physical things, dis-ease, um, genetic and chemical, so it's not a one size fit all approach, but that's been the approach historically, traditionally. So what I may need to go in nature and walk around the park and see the trees. That's something that I learned from James, to be quite honest, going into nature or taking drives around the city. Like I remember when we worked at PV, taking long drives. Like, why would you want to drive longer after a long day? I've learned to do that and it's relaxing. But my point is that we have to understand the differences when you need help in different areas. So again, medication may not be the right protocol for what you need, but again, we have to have these different kinds of conversation to get a greater understanding, definitions, symptoms, what this stuff looks like. Um, so I just wanted to add that. But I don't know if Sister DC is still on the line, but she had her hand up for a long time.
Sister DC, jump in.
But maybe she's gone.
Sister
I'm
DC.
here. I'm here. I've been listening to everyone, and a lot of my thoughts are found in what Muhammad said, Regina said. I've been through a lot, y'all, in 30 years. A lot of it having to do with spiritual battle, because my belief is totally grounded in there being a God. And if I believe in a God, then I also believe that there is a antichrist or devil or whatever you want to call him that is working against God's work. That being said, my path in life, I've encountered a whole lot of devil.
Mhm.
And my father's family, all of all but one of the females in my father's sisters and my grandmother died of Alzheimer's disease. Before it was even Alzheimer's, it was called dementia. So that struggle and that concern of mine of, developing mental illness has really been a real thing for me. But I stay grounded in God, not in man, not in pastor, not in, not even really in counseling. Counseling for me has benefited me, but not always has benefited me, because it's so very important to find the right counselor. And if you find a counselor that is not right for you, a lot of damage can be done. I called James early. Well, I asked James to call me earlier today because I had some awesome news. Um, and I wanted to share it with him. And over the last 11 months, I've been kind of COVID, on the fringe of things. I moved and left a stable house and job in Arizona to move to Florida right before COVID became a thing. The job when I got here was no longer here because of COVID shutdown. So I've kind of gone 11 months out of my element, living in environments that I'm not used to, dealing with people who don't care about themselves, less care about me, and catching or passing on COVID. there was a period of time that for 9 days, I even slept in my car for 9 days. But my constant prayer, my constant focus on God and what God is doing with me helped me get to this point where I accepted a job offer on Monday that's going to put me back in my life. And I'm expecting another job offer in the next few days. And I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful that God kept me and kept me sound minded, because during the last 11 months, I have had some demonic thoughts and some had to battle with some mental illness. I don't know who was on the call. I think it was the day before New Year's Eve when I just went off. I just had to release some stuff. And it was anxiety, anxiousness, not knowing what was about to happen, just a lot. So again, a lot of what Muhammad said, a lot of what Regina said, even Danielle, even Vernell, a lot of that resonates with me on a really real level. For the last 4 months, I've been looking like a homeless woman. I'm still in my car that's still packed from the day that I left Arizona, February 28th of 2020. All right. But again, life's about to change. I'm about to reclaim my position, reclaim my lifestyle. And I'm just so grateful to God. I'm grateful for you guys also, because through it all, I had an anchor with joining you all on Thursdays and listening and contributing and talking, and I plan on continuing to do so. So that's what I wanted to chime in on. I wanted to, just add my little blip of story and my mental health uh I'm not going to say issues, but my mental health concerns, and my counseling background. I've been in counseling, secular, non-secular, and just finding the right person is really what works. I yield.
Once again, congratulations. Um, going through a prolonged storm is something that will change you. But the one of the lines in the color purple that I always, during my several storms, I always held near and dear to my heart is trouble don't last always. And we have to hold on to what we have to hold on to be able to make it through. So congratulations. Congratulations. Um, we're at the exactly at the top of the hour. And as we always do, you guys know the rule that we do a closing to allow those who need to exit. And those who want to hang around, you're free to hang around longer if you have time and so desire. So, let me also thank my brother for being so transparent in regards to, his story and what he's been through. And as I said at the very beginning, my man, God ain't done with you yet. And stay the course and learn from this situation. I won't even call it a mistake, from this learning opportunity, and get that balance back. You're gonna always be weird and strange and what have you. But you're still appreciated and lovable and what have you. So I will pass the mic to Brother Muhammad, unless he wants to allow his understudy to take us out tonight. Okay, and he's shaking his head. Yes, he would. So we're passing the mic to Brother Carlton, so he can do what he does.
Man. All right, love you guys. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us and joining this discussion. And as we always say, you kill the nigga in you, I'm gonna kill the nigga in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Love your family, peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, shalom. Fuck the landing this time.
Okay, yeah, you kind of buffering, you're kind of choppy over there on your internet connection, my brother. Okay, but I saw Sister Vernell filling in the gap for you. She gonna mess around and say that over there in seminary class.
And I have shared this with some friends already. Like,
yeah, one of let me stop this.